What's up, everybody? This is my Turo car. I'm actually out in Arizona, as you can tell by the landscape behind me, but this is one of my first two Turo cars. I was not planning on reviewing this car because I was actually planning on having a 2022 G70 Launch Edition, but on my way to the airport yesterday, I got a call that it was actually wrecked and unavailable. So I was in a scramble to find something. There was a lot of cars that were not very exciting for this, around the same money or less. And there was some cars for some more money than I originally paid for my Turo. And I didn't feel like spending a lot of money. So I thought to myself, well, what do I want to experience or review or whatever? And so I came across this, a 2026 Toyota Corolla Hatchback. This is the XE, and why did I choose this? I thought about spending a little more money and getting something cool, but as a car person, as you know, we just always think about performance cars, and we always think about what car would be fun or cool to have, but we don't think about how the other side experiences cars. People who just need a car to go A and B. I'm not talking the other side that aren't car enthusiasts, but want to buy cool cars. Just people who are looking to go A to B. And truth be told, at one point when I thought about making the Charger my secondary car and just getting a boring daily, I considered the Corolla Hatch reliable, practical. And so I was like, you know what? Let me try out the 2026 Hatch. It is also the base model, which starts at 25. Oh, what does it start at? It's one of the cheaper cars out there. 24,580. So we'll call it 25K. Average new car is about 50, 51. So it's about half of what a new car costs. And so it's a practical, cheap, reliable daily driver that a lot of people who just look for a car to go A to B would look at, except for it's kind of a dying breed. The Econo Practical Hatch, they were a lot more popular back in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, but they've fallen out of favor like sedans have for people going to crossovers and small SUVs. So I just thought it would be interesting to get a look at just an appliance car, essentially, and a car that's the last of a dying breed, because other than this, you can go Mazda 3 has a hatchback, Kia K4 just put out a hatchback, although that's starting to enter wagon territory, really. And then the Subaru Impreza hatchback is out there as well. But this is, out of those, this is the most boring econo box there is, and really is kind of the last of a dying breed. And so I just wanted to check it out. So let's go ahead and check it out. So let's talk about the looks really quick. Although this is just an econo hatch, I actually think it's a pretty good looking car. I really like I like the overall silhouette of the car. It's a very traditional hatchback while looking modern. I think Toyota does a very good job of their design language overall. I think the front looks pretty good. I think the rear looks pretty good. Overall, I think it's a good car, a good looking car, especially just for an econo hatch and something that's not trying to win any design awards. But I like every angle of this car. I don't think it is a gorgeous car, but I think it's a good looking regular car. And it's a car that definitely from a look standpoint, you shouldn't be embarrassed to be seen in. So we're starting off with the front seat. The front seat is nothing really too special. We have a mechanical adjustable seat, front and back adjustment. We have a decent interior. We have a lot of like fake soft leather, whether that's on the door panel, even the door handle is a textured rubberized plastic to feel like leather. We actually do have leather here on the side of the door and just some piano black trim. It's nothing too special. We do have this steering wheel round all the way around, that fake rubberized leather texture on the middle of the steering wheel. We have buttons over on the left to control phone and voice control and volume and radio, as well as scroll the center console, the center gauge cluster screen we have in here, which we'll talk about the gauge cluster here in a second. For the other side of the steering wheel, we have our cruise control, our lane keep assist on off, our radar cruise control, and our next track and audio mode button. Surprisingly, we actually have paddle shifters, which we'll talk about that shortly. But that's kind of it for the steering wheel. The steering wheel is manual adjustable. On the stock, we have our lights and our blinkers, and then on the right stock, we have our wiper controls, just very basic stuff. So then we move on to the center screen, where the center screen, it sticks up out of the dashboard instead of being integrated, which is common in a lot of, even some luxury cars, but in the lower end cars, they tend to not be as integrated. Some piano black trim around it and below it. And just below the air vents, we have our we have our climate control, and we have buttons, which is so super nice. It is so nice to have buttons. And when I'm going through all these features, remember, this is the XE. This is the base trim. So we've already talked about radar, cruise control, and paddle shifters. And so that's all nice features. But then where this car really gets surprising, and we'll talk about the paddle shifter some, is down in the middle, we have a manual mode in the XE, the base trim. And we have the drive mode selector. There is drive modes. There's eco, normal, and sport, where sport is supposed to tighten up the steering, rev a little bit higher, be less worried about fuel economy. We'll talk more about how sport mode feels while we're driving. We have traction control on and off, and we have our typical PRND shifter, and you can actually move it over to manual mode and use the gear selector as your gear shifter as well. Just in front of that, we actually have a wireless charging pad, which I've tried it with a phone case on, phone case off. It has not worked super well for me. So maybe I'm just not doing it right, but it has not worked super well for me. And on top of that, there is wireless Apple CarPlay. Now, this is a 2026. I just bought a 2023 Stinger, so it's about 3 to 4 years different depending on production dates. But my Stinger, which is supposed to be a luxury car, doesn't have Apple CarPlay. Oh, it doesn't have wireless Apple CarPlay. It only has wired Apple CarPlay. But if you want to go wired, you can go to the USB-C that's just to the right of that. And then farther behind the gear shifter, we have 2 cup holders. We have our parking brake and our automatic hold button there as well. And so that's kind of the center control area. So moving on to the infotainment system, you have CarPlay available. If you subscribe, you actually have navigation available in this base trim. You have music controls with AM, FM radio. You can connect your phone with Bluetooth, or you can connect your subscription to Amazon and Apple Music as well. You have phone in the infotainment system, which if you have Apple CarPlay will just take you back to CarPlay. And then you also can look at vehicle alerts and trip information. And then you have your settings page, which doesn't have too much in it. There's nothing too interesting in here. Just screen brightness. But other than that, not too much in there. And so that's just what it is. So moving on to the other screen in here, we have the center gauge cluster screen. And so when you go through that, it's got a few different pages, and those pages include your speed and your distance to empty, your fuel economy, your eco gauge with how good you're driving, your adaptive cruise control, your compass, what's playing, your trip odometer and tire pressure, the different settings for the different safety features, and then if your car has any warning messages. So nothing too special in that gauge cluster screen. It also shows if you're in park, reverse drive, or your gear while you're in manual mode. Of course, your odometer. It actually has a speed limit sign, which is very interesting in such a cheap car. And then your temperature and your clock. And then, of course, your tach and your speedo are manual, as well as your gauge cluster and your temperature cluster. As for the doors aren't anything too special. You have window controls, and you have a door pocket with a cup holder. Same thing on the passenger side. You have your one window control, your unlock, your lock, and your door panel, cup holder, etc. The storage in here isn't too bad. The glove compartment is decent sized, as well as the center console, which actually has an adjustable armrest on the top, which is always a nice feature in this car, especially when the seats themselves don't have individual armrests. So let's move on to the back seat. So as you can imagine, the back seat's fairly sparse. Not super duper roomy. After all, it is not a huge car, but they continue to try to put nice-ish materials for the price on the door. You got the leather-wrapped armrest, the piano black trim. You have a cup holder up here, but no storage in the door. In the back of the seat, you actually have some storage pocket on both seats. You have cup holders in the middle, and surprisingly, there's 2 USB-C ports in the back seat. There's no climate vents, but there's 2 USB-C ports, a cup holder for each door, and some rear door pockets. The center also folds down into a cup holder and armrest. And overall, the back seat is not too roomy, but it's surprisingly not bad. I mean, I'm 5'10", I'm more legs than I am torso. My seat's about in my driving position, and my knees don't quite touch. They're pretty close, but they don't quite touch, and my headroom's decent, but definitely not a huge back seat. Above average size men will probably not fit super well back here. But for a very cheap Econo hatch, it's pretty nice back here. Just cloth seats, but nothing too special back here. Let's check out the cargo area. So now let's talk rear storage and hatchback. So the hatchback here actually has 18 cubic feet, about 18 cubic feet of storage space, where the sedan's about 13 cubic feet. Now, mind you, the sedan is longer. It's 180 inches long, and don't quote me on that yet, is 182.5 inches long. The hatch is 172.0 inches long, so 10.5 inches shorter, but it offers you 18 cubic feet of cargo space versus 13.1 cubic feet of cargo space. And so it's a shorter or even more tossable car. Also, it has 57.1 inches of ground clearance over 56.5 inches of ground clearance, so it can drive over a little bit more, and the width is 70.1 inches in the sedan and 70.5 inches in the hatch, so practically the same width, shorter, a little more ground clearance, and a good amount more of cargo space. You can see here I have my backpack, my hiking bag, an extra bladder, a hat, and yesterday when I got back from the airport, or when I left from the airport, I actually had this in a suitcase, and I had enough room for another suitcase or two, as well as another backpack. You have your cargo cover. Under here, you actually have this rubber mat from the Turo place that I rented it from. They threw this in here. But you actually can pull this up, and you have a full-size spare jack, tools to get it all off, and you could maybe hide some stuff in some nooks and crannies. But where they also get cargo space is on the sides here. There is these deep side pockets that give you a little bit of space for some small items. And now I don't know why. I'll have to figure out why I can't get that closed here in a second. But decent cargo space, decent utility. So before we go take it on a drive, let's just talk powertrain. All right, so now we are in the front. We pull this up. It is a manual hood with a manual gear latch, which now I'm not able to find when I could find. Oh, weirdly on the hood, it's also hot. That's why I turned the engine off before I started filming this. That does not feel like the right place for the prop. That does. All right, so we got propped up. So what we have here is just a 2-liter inline 4. It is not hybrid or anything like so many cars nowadays. It is the 2-liter dynamic force engine. It makes 169 horsepower, 151 foot-pounds of torque. It is not a race car. Funny, I can actually hear myself echoing in here. You won't pick it up on the mic, but I can hear myself echo in here. Not super fast, not a race car, but not slow. It's fine. It'll get you where you need to go. You can make some moves in traffic. It's a pretty light car overall. And then what's funny is it's connected to a CVT. So it has paddle shifters, but it's connected to a CVT, so that doesn't really make too much sense. But you can shift through 7 gears, but it's fine. It'll get you where you need to go, but it's not going to throw you back in your seat overall. But let's go ahead and drive it. All right, so we are finally doing our driving review of the Toyota Corolla Hatchback XE base rental car trim, and it's just a car. Right? What did I say it had? This is, and I say finally, by the way, because this is obviously not the same day. I ran out of time that first day, which was 2 days ago from when I'm recording this. Then I was down in Tucson doing hiking and all sorts of stuff yesterday, so I didn't have time. But that gave me more time to have more perspective on the driving experience of this car, because now I've taken on a long-ish drive, 2 hours down to Tucson, driven around Tucson, went up Mount Lemmon in it, and if you know, Mount Lemmon's awesome. It is a great road. If you are down by Tucson or in southern Arizona at all, and you're into driving, get a fun car and go hit Mount Lemmon. But anyways, so this car has 169 horsepower, 151 foot-pounds of torque. So of course the driving experience is not fast. It's pretty slow if you're used to even somewhat quick cars. But it's enough to get you around, make some moves on the highway, pass some people if you need to, because it's such a small little car. It doesn't need a lot of horsepower, and I hope there's not too much road noise. The road is kind of rough because it's the desert, it bakes, so I hope there's not too much road noise or camera shaking. But it's loud in here, right? There's a lot of road noise. There's a lot of tire noise, there's a lot of wind noise, and some of that wind noise is coming from the pretty long windshield in this car for what it is. The windshield is longer than I think it is in my Stinger GT, but it's pretty loud in here. It's not insulated, but of course it is just a base trim of a econo hatch, daily driver, commuter hatchback. So of course that's kind of to be expected. And like I said, I had it on Mount Lemon, and it actually was kind of fun on Mount Lemon. I think any car on roads where you can't go super fast can be fun. But I had a good time on Mount Lemon, which one day I'll come back with a fun car and actually make a video like I did for Tail of the Dragon of driving Mount Lemon. It is a must-do drive, absolutely. But it was fine, it felt like it cornered well for what it was because of its little wheelbase and its little tossable size, but it's clearly not a sports car. And there is the sport mode, the normal mode, and the eco mode. The sport mode supposedly, like I said, just tightens up the steering some and you can rev a little higher, but it doesn't really feel any different. The steering is barely noticeable. And so the sport mode is kind of a joke. I did put it on in sport mode some while I was going down Mount Lemon, but it was barely noticeable. And then the only other thing of note for the drive experience is that it does have a manual mode. For some reason, it feels like the shifts are more smooth when you use the shifter up and down for shifting gears instead of the two paddles. But either way, downshifts feel very clunky and jerky, and upshifts are hit or miss. They're smooth or a little bit jerky. I mean, it's obviously not a sports transmission. It's just a CVT, so you don't really expect much. When you try to get anywhere near redline in manual mode, it cuts you off like 500 plus RPM before redline. So it gives you a sports mode that doesn't, even really tighten up the steering much at all, and it gives you manual mode but doesn't let you fully rev it out. So it's clear that those are more gimmicks than they are purpose-built sports car features. And this clearly is not a sports car. This is not the GR Corolla hatchback. And then the other driving thing is safety features. I think the lane keep assist is one of the better ones that I've driven. I've driven a few lane keep assist cars, and this one more is like guiding you than it is yanking the wheel or fighting you if you really fight back against it. And it does a good job of giving you some margin of error. I think it is much more forgiving and less controlling than the one in my Stinger. I think that's good. I think the radar cruise control is really good. I love that Toyota includes those safety features at the lowest trims. Same thing with blind spot monitoring on your side mirrors. But overall, it is exactly what you think it is. It is the definition of a car that somebody just needs an appliance to go A to B, so they buy a cheap car. But it's fine. And if you're just looking for a fun daily, no, I wouldn't even say fun, but if you're just looking for a daily that's somewhat tossable and you don't want to spend hot hatch money and you want some hatchback versatility, I would definitely recommend this maybe in a higher trim if you can swing it so you can get a little bit nicer interior and features and stuff like that. But overall, it's fine if you get it as a rental car. It's fine if you just need a somewhat cheap daily. It's just under $25,000 in this trim without features versus $50,000 to $51,000 for the average new car. So if you just need something to get A to B and you aren't bothered by road noise, you turn up your music a little bit, and you're not looking for something sporty, definitely consider the Toyota Corolla hatchback in any trim. It's just a fine daily driver, and I definitely don't hate it as a Turo car if I'm not looking for something special. And it got great gas mileage going up and down to Tucson and up Mount Lemon. So overall, it's just a fine car. If you're considering a Corolla hatchback, get it. I haven't driven its direct competitors in the Mazda 3 hatch or the Subaru Impreza hatch or even the K4 hatch that's really more of a wagon. But this was a good experience for just a normal car, and it was definitely interesting to kind of see how the other side of car buyers live, the ones who don't care about performance. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Corolla hatchback. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you like car content and you want to see some more of mine and you want to see it first. And thank you again so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Have a good day. Bye.